This CBA thing is going to cause, I think, some problems in the locker room potentially. There's a lot of people now questioning their reps for voting whichever way that they voted. There's a lot of people now that weren't in the voting for the reps or the executive committee that are speaking out about said deal that is getting offered to the players to vote on currently, which is going to happen now. The CBA proposal that the NFL put together and the NFLPA put together went to a vote from the player reps. 17 said yes, 14 said no. One person said, nah, not voting either. I don't want to be a part of this. So that'll go to a league-wide vote. And now what that has done has caused some emotionally charged reactions. And we can probably assume that Maurkice Pouncey, center for the Steelers, is out on the new potential CBA.
Man, crazy, man. I vote no. Our NFLPA, the dudes at the top, the leaders, man, all bull. That they ain't looking out for the best of the players. And if y'all want my vote, the Pouncey twins vote no. And if any player, any one of our teams, if y'all heard for rent money or anything while we go through this lockout, call us. Man, we got way more money than what they had back in the days. We ain't got to worry about that. All the vets on each team stand the up. Stand up. Show these guys that we care about them. Man, I care about all you young players, and I love you guys to death. I ain't going to let y'all down. Trust and believe. They trying to sign a bull-ass deal just so these motherfuckers sitting there president can go around and smile and say, I got something done. You ain't get done.
Okay, so he's a no. Maurkice Pouncey will be voting no. And I can understand where Maurkice Pouncey is potentially coming from, by the way, because whenever you're sitting and you're being represented by people, okay, so when you're sitting back and you're being represented by people, and said people were around for last CBA, and there was a lot of flaws that were talked about in the locker room about the last CBA, right? Maurkice Pouncey's been around for a lot of those conversations that happened. He's been around a long time. So now whenever the same people are doing the negotiation and the same people are potentially coming out with an outcome you don't like, at some point you're going to explode. I think that's what Maurkice Pouncey did. Now, it looked like he was in a beautiful, beautiful weather climate. Mm-hmm. I think he's down in Florida somewhere. Had his shirt off, chain hanging, great music playing, sunroof open, windows down. Seems like it should be a good day for Maurkice Pouncey. He said, no, passionately, this deal is trash, and the people that were representing us up there should not be proud of anything that they did. And that is a direct line from Maurkice Pouncey to the rest of the NFL, telling them, hey, just because these people that we hired to negotiate this deal, just because we hired them to, doesn't mean they're right. We want more people to look at it. Maurkice Pouncey's voice, I assume, and this is just from the reaction that happened after the Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph situation from the rest of the league and all the media members. I would assume Maurkice Pouncey's voice carries a lot of weight. You don't see him do a lot of these types of things. The fact that he's this upset and in that emotional, I think it will draw not only attention from us, where FCC, we had to beep out the entire thing, but attention from the rest of the players too, going, hey, why is Maurkice so angry about this? And then you flip on the other side of it. Now you got the player rep from the Detroit Lions. His name is
Devon Kennard.
Devon Kennard said, my vote was yes. Okay. So now we're automatically learning who voted what, and players are questioning players why they voted that. Devon Kennard said, is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I did good there. My vote was yes. When the 17th game was originally brought up by the owners in negotiations, our executive committee and player reps had to ask ourselves, what would the deal have to include to accept a 17th game? I went back to my locker room and received feedback from as many guys as I could. All of the other reps did the same, and the overwhelming consensus that most reps brought back were this: one 17th game check for all players, a significant bump in minimum salaries, an increased percentage of the cap, a significant increase in benefits, and better quality of life. Parenthesis, camp/offseason schedule, parenthesis. This deal is not perfect by any means, and there are things that, he spelled there wrong. Can't do that, by the way. Can't do it. You know, they're there and there. They're tough. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But every once in a while, you got to get that right, especially when you're making a statement. There are things that I most certainly, but by the way, that slips through the cracks. Mm-hmm. That gets the best of people. I don't know if anybody saw the way my lady was trying to spell prestigious yesterday, but grammar and things like that get in the way. I mess up all the time. But it's tough whenever you're reading this. Anyways, there are things that I most certainly wish were different and or better, but when I took a step back, majority of the things we wanted is included in this deal. Every player will get a 17th game check, one 17th game check. Minimum salaries have made a significant increase. We now get 48% with the opportunity to reach 48.5%. 17 game schedule implemented, blah, blah, blah. Player benefits have improved immensely, including former players. And lastly, work rules around camp schedules specifically are much improved. Overall, this is a deal that is going to lead to NFL players getting paid more than we ever have in the past, and I, capital letters, love that. Okay, so you heard J.J. Watt, Russell Wilson, Marquise Pouncey, and others. We'll show James Harrison, OG, what he said in a second. Say no. This is the first player you've heard say yes and explain why, right? So now we are legitimately seeing a difference. RG3 tweeted out to somebody, who voted yes? Who are the people that voted yes? I want to hear from them. And then they were like, explain yourself. So that's what happens if you're a player rep. I just learned that. I had no idea that this happens. Like, you're getting held accountable for everything you do. But there's a real divide in the NFL right now on who did what. James Harrison said that this is the same crappy deal from 2011, basically. This deal shouldn't have been even on the table. And basically, he took a shot at DeMaurice Smith, who's the NFLPA president. He said, do what's best for the players or go work for the NFL, to DeMaurice Smith, basically. So that's a guy that was around for the conversations, by the way, after the last CBA. They were like, this guy did this guy did this did this did this. DeMaurice Smith, not in a good position either. But if he doesn't get a deal done, and it's a good deal, he's going to look terrible by all the players. Players hate him. And last but not least, Aaron Rodgers typed up quite a diatribe, which I appreciated, by the way. He was the first player to come out and explain exactly why he voted no and why he didn't appreciate where the deal was at. Aaron Rodgers says, I voted no last night. My thoughts was how it was captioned with a hashtag. I voted no last night. My decision to vote no is based off of the conversations I've had with men in my locker room that I'm tasked to represent. Okay, by the way, respect that. Okay, that's what government's supposed to be. That's what NFL player reps are supposed to do. You're supposed to represent the people that voted you in because there is a vote. So look at these guys, Devon Kennard, all the boys going back to the locker room. It's the offseason, so I don't know if you have a team text. I don't know how that works, or you're just talking to the people that are in the building. And he says, hey, guys, what are we thinking? And they go, Aaron, 17 games. No. And this is the overwhelming response, he says. Well, hello there. Utilize the promo code PAYTHEBILLS and get $20 off your first order from SeatGeek. Now, back to the magic. This deal will affect every player that ever plays this game, and we have made this decision with only an abbreviated version of the deal, and that isn't good enough. Although I do see that there are many things in the proposal that improve the lives and care for the past, present, and future NFL players, there are issues with other things. 16 games, to me, was never something to be negotiated. The owners made it clear that the 17th game is about paying for the added benefits and had nothing to do with positive feedback received about any extra risks involved with the added regular season game. Also, an extra game for every 2 seed moving forward on Wild Card Weekend, i.e. the Green Bay Packers this past season would have no bye. There are also many issues raised about the workplace, the workload, and the offseason program. Some have been addressed while others have not. With an extra game added to the schedule, added risk, and longer stretches before and after the bye week, we felt it was, Sometimes when you're typing emotionally, though, that type of stuff's going to happen. We felt it was important to address adding more offseason recovery time. The ideas discussed would not add costs for teams. In fact, if anything, it would lessen some of them. My involvement has been for less than the negotiating team, the executive committee, and the owners in these conversations, and I'm sensitive to that and appreciative of the time and sacrifices made. My involvement as a player rep and a 15-year player in this great game, though, allows me this platform to share my opinion and at the same time requires me to speak on behalf of the sentiment that I hear from my teammates. So he went on and said, listen, basically, the value of our players and the strength of the NFLPA can only be realized if we ourselves know and believe in our worth. Ooh, that was some deep. I respect the democratic nature of this process and have been and will continue to talk with my teammates on the Packers and my colleagues across the league. So that's the first real diatribe or explanation on why somebody voted no. He said the extra game, by the way, it's a bunch of malarkey, basically. That's what he said, extra game. He talked about the offseason rest schedule and everything like that being good. But I feel like that 17th game for a lot of people is like, hey, if they want an extra week of football, that's an extra, we did the math, the extra 1.5% of the revenue share was $5 billion over 10 years. So that extra 17th game and two weekend playoff games is going to be a lot more money for the NFL, a lot more money. And the OGs know that. And now you're getting to a point where it's like, do you do what the OGs who've been around and are rich, very rich, and are probably going to be affected the most by this, by the way, because playoff checks are less. They're off season. They don't have to do as much. I mean, the OGs who've been around, who are wealthy, who have been there, done that, are saying no. And everybody's like, well, it's because they're rich and they're only looking out for themselves. It's like, well, maybe it's also because they went through the last CBA and witnessed all the regret that happened directly after signing the new CBA. Maybe that's why. I mean, it could be because they're rich and they're out of touch and they're only voting for themselves and being selfish. It could be that. Or it also could be the fact that they remember the conversations that were happening in locker rooms immediately after the last CBA was signed, which was like, man, we got absolutely fornicated on this deal. So although this thing is very interesting and there's a lot of numbers at hand, there is so much that goes into this because you got people making $100,000 that are only playing in 3-4 games a year. And you got people making potentially $200 million guaranteed who all have to agree on the same thing. That's never going to happen. That's like the elections in America. We're supposed to vote one person to run this country. We are 50 different countries. You go to Miami and you go to Indiana, you're talking about two very different places. Two different languages are being spoken. And now we're all supposed to come together and vote on one person. It's a system set up for absolute chaos. That's what it is. There's no way that somebody who grew up in California and somebody who grew up in Pittsburgh are going to have the same ideas or ideals, but only one person and one set of people are supposed to govern it. That's what it's like for this CBA. You got people from all walks of life, all walks of life. I think that's what's great about football, by the way. Anybody can play football. Little fat guy, he can play. Big fat guy, he can play. Guy that's built like DK Metcalf, he can play. Anybody can play the sport of football from anywhere, and that's why it's beautiful, but that's also why it's so incredibly impossible to make everybody happy, and that's what we're witnessing right now, and this is what the NFL is banking on, is a little bit of discourse, because as soon as that happens, they ultimately know that they're going to end up with the best deal possible.
It's very interesting to see players like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers and J.J. Watt are the ones that are coming out and saying no to the deal because they don't need the 17th game check, and they don't need that additional money really. But then the lower half of the players who are on the committee and on our player reps are saying yes because they do want that 17th game check. They do want that minimum increase.
Not just them, by the way.
No.
But the people
there's a lot more of them
Yeah.
who are going to be voting in this than there are the players who have made their $100 million.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But also, it's like you can easily say that it's just because they're selfish and they're only worrying about themselves. But those guys that have all made that money were around for the last CBA, right? The younger guys who haven't been around as long don't have as much money. Those guys, those conversations of regret, I mean, they were real. Almost every plane ride home for like a year was like talking about, oh, did you hear about this? Boom, yep, we lost this. Boom, we lost this. Boom, we lost this. There was never any like, hey, we got this, we got this, we got this. It was always like, we lost this, we lost this, we lost this. So maybe those conversations are ringing a little bit truer in those guys' heads. Maybe it is just about their money. I can't judge for them. The fact that Marquise Pouncey said, yo, young guys, I'll give you a loan if you need it. Hilarious and awesome.